show reminded us of an excellent work by author and intelligence community historian Dr. John Coleman. An excerpt of Dr. Coleman's work, The Conspirators Hierarchy, the Committee of 300, covering the major goals of the Illuminati, by Dr. John Coleman, from Conspirators Hierarchy, the story of the Committee of 300. Number 1. To establish a one-world government/New World Order with a unified church and monetary system under their direction. The one-world government began to set up its church in the 1920s and 30s, for they realized the need for a religious belief inherent in mankind must have an outlet, and therefore set up a church body to channel that belief in the direction they desired. Number 2. To bring about the utter destruction of all national identity and national pride, which was a primary consideration if the concept of a one-world government was to work. Number 3. To engineer and bring about the destruction of religion, and more especially the Christian religion, with the one exception, their own creation, as mentioned previously. Number 4. To establish the ability to control of each and every person through means of mind control, and what Zbigniew Brzezinski called technotronics, which would create human-like robots, and a system of terror which would make Felix Dzerzhinsky's Red Terror look like children at play. Number 5. To bring about the end to all industrialization and the production of nuclear-generated electric power in what they call the post-industrial zero-growth society. Accepted are the computer and service industries. U.S. industries that remain will be exported to countries such as Mexico, where abundant slave labor is available. As we saw in 1993, this has become a fact through the passage of the North American Free Trade Agreement known as NAFTA. Unemployables in the U.S., in the wake of industrial destruction, will either become opium, heroin, and/or cocaine addicts, or become statistics in the elimination of the excess population process we know of today as Global 2000. Number 6. To encourage and eventually legalize the use of drugs and make pornography an art form, which will be widely accepted and eventually become quite commonplace. Number 7. To bring about the depopulation of large cities according to the trial run carried out by the Pol Pot regime in Cambodia. It is interesting to note that Pol Pot's genocidal plans were drawn up in the U.S. by one of the Club of Rome's research foundations and overseen by Thomas Enders, a high-ranking State Department official. It is also interesting that the committee is currently seeking to reinstate the Pol Pot butchers in Cambodia. Number 8. To suppress all scientific development except those deemed beneficial by the Illuminati. Especially targeted is nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. Particularly hated are the fusion experiments currently being scorned and ridiculed by the Illuminati and its jackals of the press. Development of the fusion torch would blow the Illuminati's conception of limited natural resources right out the window. A fusion torch, properly used, could create unlimited and as yet untapped natural resources, even from the most ordinary substances. Fusion torch uses are legion, and would benefit mankind in a manner which, as yet, is not even remotely comprehended by the public. Number 9. To cause, by means of limited wars in the advanced countries, by means of starvation and diseases in the third world countries, the death of 3 billion people by the year 2050, people they call useless eaters. The Committee of 300, Illuminati, commissioned Cyrus Vance to write a paper on this subject of how to bring about such a genocide. The paper was produced under the title Global 2000 Report and was accepted and approved for action by former President James Earl Carter and Edwin Muskie, then Secretary of States, for and on behalf of the U.S. government. Under the terms of the Global 2000 Report, the population of the U.S. is to be reduced by 100 million by the year 2050. Number 10. To weaken the moral fiber of the nation and to demoralize workers in the labor class by creating mass unemployment. As jobs dwindle due to the post-industrial zero-growth policies introduced by the Club of Rome, the report envisages demoralized and discouraged workers resorting to drugs and alcohol. The youth of the land will be encouraged by means of rock music and drugs to rebel against the status quo, thus undermining and eventually destroying the family unit. In this regard, the committee commissioned Tavistock Institute to prepare a blueprint as to how this could be achieved. Tavistock directed Stanford Research to undertake the work under the direction of Professor Willis Harman. This work later became known as the Aquarian Conspiracy. Number 11. To keep people everywhere from deciding their own destinies by means of one created crisis after another, and then managing such crises. This will confuse and demoralize the population to the extent where, faced with too many choices, apathy on a massive scale will result. In the case of the U.S., an agency for crisis management is already in place. It's called the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, whose existence I first disclosed in 1980. Number 12. To introduce new cults and continue to boost those already functioning, which include rock music gangsters such as the Rolling Stones, a gangster group much favored by the European nobility, and all the Tavistock-created rock groups which began with the Beatles. Number 13. To continue to build up the cult of Christian fundamentalism began by the British East India Company's servant Darby, which will be misused to strengthen the Zionist state of Israel by identifying with the Jews through the myth of God's chosen people, and by donating very substantial amounts of money to what they mistakenly believe is a religious cause in the furtherance of Christianity. Number 14. To press for the spread of religious cults such as the Muslim Brotherhood, Muslim fundamentalism, the Sikhs, and to carry out mind control experiments of the Jim Jones and Son of Sam type. It is worth noting that the late Khomeini was the creation of British Military Intelligence Division 6, also known as MI6. This detailed work spelled out the step-by-step process which the U.S. government implemented to put Khomeini in power. Number 15. To export religious liberation ideas around the world so as to undermine all existing religions, but more especially the Christian religion. This began with the Jesuit liberation theology that brought about an end to the Somoza family rule in Nicaragua, and which today is destroying El Salvador, now 25 years into a civil war. Costa Rica and Honduras are also embroiled in revolutionary activities, instigated by the Jesuits. One very active entity engaged in the so-called liberation theology is the communist-oriented Mary Knoll Mission. This accounts for the extensive media attention to the murder of 4 of Mary Knoll's so-called nuns in El Salvador a few years ago. The 4 nuns were communist subversive agents, and their activities were widely documented by the government of El Salvador. The U.S. press and the new media refused to give any space or coverage to the mass of documentation possessed by the Salvadorian government, which proved what the Mary Knoll Mission nuns were doing in the country. Mary Knoll is in service in many countries and placed a leading role in bringing communism to Rhodesia, Mozambique, Angola, and South Africa. Number 16. To cause a total collapse of the world's economies and engender total political chaos. Number 17. To take control of all foreign and domestic policies of the U.S. Number 18. To give the fullest support to supranational institutions such as the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, the Bank of International Settlements, the World Court, and, as far as possible, make local institutions less effective by gradually phasing them out or bringing them under the mantle of the UN. Number 19. To penetrate and subvert all governments and work from within them to destroy the sovereign integrity of the nations represented by them. Number 20. To organize a worldwide terrorist apparatus and to negotiate with terrorists whenever terrorist activities take place. It will be recalled that it was Bettino Craxi who persuaded the Italian and U.S. governments to negotiate with the Red Brigade's kidnappers of Prime Minister Moro and General Dozier. As an aside, Dozier was placed under strict orders not to talk about what happened. Should he ever break that silence, he will no doubt be made a horrible example of, in the manner in which Henry Kissinger dealt with Aldo Moro, Ali Bhutto, and General Zia al-Haq. Number 21. To take control of education in America with the intent and purpose of utterly and completely destroying it. By 1993, the full force effect of this policy is becoming apparent and will be even more destructive as primary and secondary schools begin to teach OBE, or outcome-based education.
If you enjoy this